Hi, I'm Abby, I have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday. I feel like you don't get the full effect of the necklace ever, which is a bummer. It's a really nice necklace. It's coming off then. Best I use the clasp instead of just ripping it over my head like I normally might. Can't be acting like a barbarian when I've worked so hard on this. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. Vinyl Monday is the who, what, when, where, why, and how do I feel about classic albums in my collection. If TV show length episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds, here on my channel, over on my Instagram, as well as TikTok. This week's episode is another overhauled episode from the distant past in this channel. I was never happy with the original, but this was always going to be a record that would be difficult to evaluate. I talk about a lot of albums that I love on this channel, but not very many in my everyday listening rotation. I cook with this album, I eat with this album, I shower and sleep and wake with it. It's been a part of my everyday life for many years. This body of work from this artist has been such a part of my everyday life for so long now, I worried that it would be difficult to parse out how I actually felt about it, but if there was any time I was going to tackle this album, it would be now, as this is our 5th and final 60th anniversary we are celebrating this summer. This week, we are celebrating the 60th anniversary of Donovan, Sunshine Superman. Congrats if you guessed this one. Remember, if you want to play along, all you gotta do is check out my post tab. That's where I post the hints to what the next album is gonna be. I make announcements, I host polls, you can find all of that on my channel. And, if you so choose, you can always read the written versions of my reviews on my website. Linked in the description, that's where you'll find that Blonde on Blonde review. That was a blog exclusive. Alright, let's take the plastic off. So my copy is an original. This is the US version, as you can see by Sunshine Superman being in its original intended format, but more on that later. It is in stereo, which I'm not crazy about. It isn't even real stereo, as you can see up here. Electronically rechanneled for stereo. Yay, our favorite. I largely prefer Donovan's early work in mono. Now let's talk about this cover art. The Sunshine Superman cover was photographed by Barry Feinstein with illustrations and design by Dick Smith. The UK version of Sunshine Superman, which again we will hear a lot about later in this video, that album got the original intended cover of Sunshine Superman. It's an illustration by Mick Taylor, no not that one, and Sheena McCall. It's nice, but I for one am glad Epic Records nixed that cover and went with this. I love the color palette that's been used. This magenta against navy blue and a almost khaki green with the vibrant orange and yellow. This is a much more eye-catching cover and more representative of the artist's own tastes and the music on the album itself. He loved antiquing, he was partial to the Art Nouveau style. Lucky for him, Art Nouveau saw a major resurgence in the mid to late 60s. It played very nicely to the sensibilities of psychedelic art, fashion, and posters. Art Nouveau married the East and the West, antiquity and the modern age, just like Donovan did with his own music. On the back cover, we've kept it super simple. This black and white medallion, also illustrated by Dick Smith, and some companion notes written by the artist. On Sunshine Superman, we of course have Donovan. Can't really have a Donovan album without Donovan. On lead vocals, guitar, and tambura, and serving as our principal lyricist. His California ensemble consisted of Don Brown on electric guitar, Lenny Matlin on the Hammond organ, Bobby Ray on bass guitar, Fast Eddie on drums, Sean Phillips on sitar, Cyrus Farhar on bouzouki, John Carr on bongos, and Peter Pilifian on electric violin. His London ensemble consisted of Eric Ford and Jimmy Page on guitar, John Cameron on keys, Spike Healy on bass guitar, Danny Thompson played double bass in both London and California, I believe, Bobby Orr on drums, Tony Carr on percussion, and Harold McNair on flute and the saxophone. Sunshine Superman was arranged by John Cameron, produced by Mickey Most. Roll that funny psychedelic transition, man. Initially billed as Britain's answer to Bob Dylan, Donovan was on a roll in 1965. His Universal Soldier EP was a smash hit on both sides of the pond. He went on a package tour with the Pretty Things. Always nice to see those guys again. Donovan appeared on Shindig, Hollywood A Go-Go, American Bandstand, Where the Action Is, and received an endorsement from Pete Seeger. It certainly didn't hurt to have a little boost from folk music's Mother Mary either. That's Joan Baez. She covered Colors and introduced Don at that year's Newport Folk Festival. He makes a return visit to the States and hey, he's on the Ed Sullivan Show. But Donovan had two major problems heading into 1966. The ongoing comparisons to Bob and the issue of his management. Starting with that first problem, pretty clear to see. At this time, at the height of his pop culture power, Bob Dylan was God. He made his debut in England in 65, as seen in Don't Look Back, then plugged in at the 65 Newport Folk Festival and overshadowed Donovan in the process. Once folk music's darling, now Bob was the latest rock and roll messiah after Highway 61. Donovan's post-Catch the Wind output made it clear that he was no Dylan wannabe. Consider the songwriting of Why Do You Treat Me Like You Do, where Bob would write that sour, Donnie wrote it bittersweet, and Colors. This song was the start of something new in Don's eyes. Quote, I had begun to weave a world of my own into which thousands of fans would enter. I wanted to share a visionary world. I thought to myself, it is storytelling, man, and a soundtrack to your changes. Where Bob abandoned the traditional folk stylings for rock and roll, Donovan flirted with jazz. Note his treatment of Sonny Gooch Street. With this song, he said he, quote, left the folk world. Donovan took LSD for the first time in 1965 while listening to a Ravi Shankar record. This and the jazz arrangement he got for Sonny Gooch Street inspires his new musical turn, decidedly Eastern. As for his management, Donovan is currently under contract with Jeff Stevens and Peter Eden. He is signed to Pi Records in the UK, which has a distribution deal with Hickory Records in the US. This may seem like a tangent, but bear with me here. Donovan is dating Linda Lawrence. She is a fixture on the London rock and roll scene. The couple pops up at all the hottest clubs of the day. The Ad Lib, the Bag O' Nails, and at one of these clubs, Donovan meets singer-songwriter Sean Phillips. Sean is managed by Ashley Kozak, who works under Brian Epstein's NEMS Enterprises. In October of 65, Donovan fires Stevens and Eden and signs a new deal with Kozak under Vic Lewis. But at the same time, Ozzie Newman comes out and says, hey, what gives? I also signed a deal with Donovan. Don's dad steps in as Poppager while they're sorting out this injunction that Donovan's been slapped with. He can't tour for this time. It is lifted by December of 65, but this does stall his career some. Just as things go wrong with Donovan's business, his relationship with Linda falls apart. There's a heartbreaking account in Donovan's memoir where he recounts introducing Linda to his parents for the first time. These are traditional Catholic people. His folks iced her out, and his mom pulls him aside and calls Linda damaged goods. Secondhand goods referring to having a child out of wedlock with Brian Jones a few years before. Don was deeply hurt. He vowed never to return home again. Clearly this hurt Linda too. His parents' disapproval seemed to have driven a wedge between them at this time. She decides to move to California for a fresh start, maybe try a modeling career. Don knows he's losing her. Quote, "It is said that the music business loves an artist in heartache, for then the songs ring with a longing that sells records." This was certainly true for Don. He said to Disc magazine, quote, "I am a very sad person. Perhaps that is why I appear so happy. You have to be miserable before you can enjoy life." Aww. Inspired by the Byrds' Here Without You and You Won't Have to Cry, Donovan starts writing all of these songs for his muse, his one true love, his lost love, Linda. He envisioned her as all these romantic characters: Sleeping Beauty in Legend of a Girl Child Linda, Guinevere in the song of the same name, and he writes a confident message to her stating he will get her back someday. This is the song that kickstarts what will become Sunshine Superman. During all this romantic and managerial chaos, Squire approaches Donovan asking to do a BBC documentary about him. It's clear Chris had quite a romantic ideal of Donovan and his friend Dave Mills. He had them sleeping in ruins, hitchhiking, when in reality they shared a luxury apartment on Baker Street. Of note is a great big beatnik party with all Don's friends and free wine from the film crew. He briefly goes back out to California to win Linda back. Instead, she officially breaks up with him. Nursing his broken heart, Don's back to London, where he's introduced to producer Mickie Most. He'd worked with the Animals and Herman's Hermits, and he introduces Don to arranger John Cameron. These two pick up on new influences Donovan has gathered in his travels: classical stuff, jazz stuff, raga, Latin rhythms, ethnic music, which we would call world music today, and the burgeoning medieval revival in aesthetics and music. Kozak said in an interview with Record Mirror, "Pop music has been so raucous and sexy in the past. Our aim is to make the kids like beautiful music." His new songs were also full of Celtic imagery, and Don was connecting these stories he knew as a kid to the Buddhist texts he was reading. Donovan remembered Mickie as, quote, "a guy like George Martin and Phil Spector who had ears, and he also had a pop sensibility. They could also listen to a pop song and have, in 3 minutes, an experience which would enlighten their lives." Quote, "Mickie had an innate talent for choosing the song in a group of 15 that I sang to him, and he would say, 'That's the single.' That single was Sunshine Superman." Sunshine Superman and Bert's Blues were cut at EMI Studios in December of '65. The single is scheduled for release on January 28th, 1966. It will not come out on January 28th, 1966, nor will it come out on February 6th, nor will it come out sometime in June, July, or August. This single will be delayed either directly or indirectly no less than 14 times in the next 12 months. A Boy Called Donovan is broadcast for the first time on January 19th. Remember this for later. Now, just as the dust has finally settled with hiring Ashley Kozak, Dawn and Pi Records hit a big bump in the road, because instead of releasing Sunshine Superman as the February single, they release Josie. Now, this otherwise innocuous decision sets the stage for the first major grift of one of rock and roll's most infamous con men. Enter Alan Klein. Picture this. Donovan is a pop star at the height of his career with a perpetually unstable management. He believed in the goodness of his fellow man and didn't know much about the business side of the music business. Klein comes in and sides with Dawn. "Oh, Sunshine Superman is fabulous. It absolutely should have been the next single." He also thinks that Little Hickory Records out in Nashville, Tennessee just won't do. He wanted a bigger distribution deal for his new star. He has Dawn sign with Columbia Records subsidiary epic in the United States. And it was Donovan who paid the price, because in order to do this, he had to relinquish the rights to all future royalties off his first 2 albums, the massively successful Universal Soldier LP, and all of his singles to date. The situation in the UK is even worse, because in order to get Don out of this deal with Hickory, Alan Klein tore up the contract with Pi Records. Pi sues Donovan. He is ensnared in another parade of settlements, and this delayed the release of any of his music in the UK indefinitely. Don thought his career was over. He packs up and heads out to California to record the rest of what would become Sunshine Superman. Despite the lawsuit from Pi, the deal with Epic Records does still stand, and now he owes them an album. These sessions were backed right up to a week-long residency at legendary Sunset Strip haunt The Trip. These few weeks inspire the rest of Sunshine Superman's non-Linda material. On this trip to California, Don meets anyone who is anyone. The Lovin' Spoonful, The Doors, Allen Ginsberg, Bob Dylan turned up to a show in disguise, and Joan Baez. Don turns this zany week into the song The Trip. He also meets a pre-Grace Slick Jefferson Airplane, name-dropping them on the song The Fat Angel, which he wrote about Cass Elliot of the Mamas and the Papas. Fast Eddie was the Mamas and the Papas drummer. He tagged along for Sunshine Superman sessions, and Don met Don Brown and Lenny Matlin just out on the Strip. The last Sunshine Superman song put to tape was Ferris Wheel. Meanwhile, back in England, the May 28th issue of Disc is wondering where the hell is Donovan? Flown, it appeared, on the wings of the folk music which first bore him to success. By the way, the Sunshine Superman single is coming out in 3 or 4 weeks, we swear. Donovan recorded love songs, esoteric songs, story songs, and California adventure songs, but he made a point not to include a protest song on this record. Quote, "My quest was to engender a feeling of love and compassion." Don had gone full flower child. He returns to London in late May or early June to pick up some more work. It appears he'll be staying for the summer and hopefully working out this mess with Pi Records. Hey, remember A Boy Called Donovan? Sergeant Pilcher of Scotland Yard's Drug Squad saw this film, specifically that party scene in which Don and his friends are passing around a joint. He also noted the opening lines of Sunny Goodge Street. On a Firefly platform on Sunny Goodge Street, a violent hash smoker shook a chocolate machine. The Birds 8 Miles High and Bob's Rainy Day Women caught some flack from the Gavin Report in America, but neither of these drug songs were anything bust-worthy. But put a song that directly mentions hash together with this film scene, Don is in big trouble. On the evening of June 11th, 1966, the drug squad shows up. How did they get him? They had an undercover lady cop knock on the door, and Dave just let her in. It was the middle of the night, both Donnie and Dave had girlfriends over, and a ridiculous scene unfolds, and I quote, "All the coppers wore suits. It was a special occasion, this. One big fella stomped across the Japanese mat floor in his boots and tore the lace spread from the brass bed. I stood in my birthday suit, astonished as they ripped up my pad." A policeman then produced a lump of hash, which Donovan knew wasn't his. He smoked the last of his own stash with his girlfriend just then. Kozak and his wife are busted too. George Harrison pays the £10,000 bail. As Donovan left the station, Sergeant Pilcher asked him for his autograph. Donovan became the first British pop star busted for possession. Pilcher's following series of busts included the Rolling Stones' infamous Redlands bust in '67, John and Yoko in '68, and George and Patty in '69. Donovan and Dave lay low for a while, understandably. First, they flee to the Isle of Islay in Scotland. Then they stay with George and Patty at Kinfauns for a bit, inspired by the film Zorba the Greek. Dave and Don then take off to the remote Isle of Paris. And get this, on July 1st, 1966, after an innumerable amount of settlements and resettlements, the Sunshine Superman single is finally released, and Donovan just has no idea. In a last-ditch effort to get in contact with his star, Ashley Kozak makes a phone call to the one phone on the island of Paris, and Donovan picks up. And he says something along the lines of, "Dude, you gotta come back to England. Not only is Sunshine Superman finally out, it peaked at #1 in the United States the week of September 3rd. #1 in the US? What do you mean my record's out?" "Yes, your record is out, man. It's been out for like 2 weeks. Wait, the record or the album? The album! Wait, the album? Yeah, well, I guess I gotta promote that." The track listing of Sunshine Superman goes as follows. Opening up side 1, we have the title track, Sunshine Superman, followed by Legend of Girl Child Linda, then Three Kingfishers, next Ferris Wheel, and side 1 closes with Bert's Blues. Opening up side 2, we have Season of the Witch, followed by The Trip, then Guinevere, next The Fat Angel, and the album closes with Celeste. Sunshine Superman was released on August 26th, 1966, 60 years ago, next week. I'll be on break then, I have a season finale to put together, so surprise! You get this anniversary early! The album sold 250,000 pre-order copies off the back of that single, Donovan's only #1 single, and 250,000 copies more after release, making Sunshine Superman a gold record. The album just barely missed out on the top 10 here, peaking at #11. As for the UK, the trouble didn't end for a while. The single was pushed back several more times, from August 5th to August 12th to sometime in September to November 15th, finally coming out December 2nd, 1966, 11 months after its intended release and a whole year after it was recorded on Pi Records. All of that mess Alan Klein kicked up was for nothing. As for the Sunshine Superman album, it encountered further delays, not being released until June of 1967. And by then, Donovan had recorded and released a whole other album, Mellow Yellow, which had a #2 single in the States in the form of the title track, but was also barred from release in the UK. In these additional 10 months between Sunshine Superman's release in the US and its release in the UK, Donovan had fallen behind the curve on the very genre he helped pioneer, psychedelic folk. Now he was one of many. Fairport Convention, Vashti Bunyan, the ISB. Oh my god, this would be an insane episode. Witch Season, The Fool, and Scientology. Oh my, yeah, I'm putting that down. Alan Klein's meddling and the drug bust proved to be the end of Donovan's time at the top. Quote, "The now music of Donovan would soon become the then music." But Sunshine Superman seemed to do what Donovan had hoped for. In Disc's review, they wrote, quote, "Let there be rejoicing from Forest Hill to Fife that at last this beautiful album has been released in Britain. A farcical situation because it's been out in the States for at least a year." The album, quote, "lost little from being out a year late." The review praises its attention to detail, which elevates this LP above being a simple collection of songs. I'm not sure I agree with this, because the UK Sunshine Superman had to smush together this album and Mellow Yellow. It leaves off a lot of amazing tracks from both records. The sequencing makes zero sense. Now, at the same time as all of this, 66 through 67, Bob Dylan has effectively benched himself for the Summer of Love. he got in that mysterious motorcycle accident. I feel like I've mentioned this like 4 videos in a row now. It's like Uncle Ben dying in every Spider-Man movie. With this series of events having played out and Donovan releasing a fully formed, fully independent artistic statement, he has officially ditched the Dylan wannabe label. This fairy tale folky image he crafted on Sunshine Superman would stick with him for the rest of his career. He capitalized on it with A Gift from a Flower to a Garden, and an album my outfit is a much better match to today, Hurdy-Gurdy Man. I want to briefly shout out the State 51 Conspiracy for sending me both this box set and the Hurdy-Gurdy Man remaster. They saw my A Gift video from a couple years ago, and they really liked it. So, what do I think of Sunshine Superman? Cut for cut, pound for pound, Sunshine Superman is tied with Hurdy-Gurdy Man as Donovan's best album. This is his sharpest writing, his clearest artistic vision. If you're fond of this one, then chances are you'll like the rest of his catalog, and it's my personal favorite of his records. I'll try my best to explain why. For starters, Donovan, Mickey Most, and John Cameron make a fantastic team. John said, quote, "Mickey was very focused on producing a really great product. Don was intent on being Donovan. Then you have John Cameron, a classically trained musician, arranger, composer, and pianist. Though he brings the classical sensibilities to Sunshine Superman, he bridges the gap between Don and Mickey. He had a feel for the pop sensibility that Mickey sought out with the artistic sensitivity that Don wanted. Making such a varied taste as Donovan's makes sense within the pop music context is not an easy thing to do, so shout out to these three. It's Sunshine Superman's eclecticism, which represents so many of the things I love in 60s pop music, that make it one of my favorite pop albums released in 1966. Take the title track, for example. Slowly Blow Your Little Mind is a reference to Donovan giving Linda her first acid trip. Sunshine was slang for the Sid back then, so Don is basically calling himself the Superman of LSD. And he low-key is. It's a 3-chord Beatles thing with a jazz element, in the form of a jazz drummer, on a Latin rhythm. This rhythm is established by 2 basses, one acoustic, one electric. The double bass and bongos give this song its bouncy opener. Then the harpsichord plays the same motif. This instrument was a no-brainer for a pop record in '66 when Baroque pop was at the height of its popularity. But my favorite parts of the arrangement of Sunshine Superman are the guitars. Ladies and gentlemen, I fear we overlooked Donovan as a guitarist. When he played this part solo in the Sunshine Superman documentary, I was like, this part is way more complex than I remember. Continuing the electric acoustic theme, the studio recording has accents of electric guitar, which is interesting considering who played them. Jimmy Page. Sunshine Superman was released in the summer of 1966, just after Jimmy replaced Paul Samuel Smith in the Yardbirds, then was about to replace Jeff Beck. But in December of '65, when Donovan went to EMI and cut this, Jimmy was just a humble session player, on call for whoever, and not one of the pioneers of the art of feedback. It's cool to hear these tasteful slips of feedback and who plays them, along with Eric, and I appreciate what they do for the song. They give it this easy, laid-back, summery feel. When I say we'll be cool, I think you'll know what I mean. We are gonna have a real good time at our happy hippie hangout, and what do you mean this thing was in a Target commercial? Sunshine came softly through my window today. I could have tripped out easier, but I've changed my ways. Donnie, you are doing nothing for a change in the Dylan comparisons there. I get it. It's the folk thing to do, and it jigsaws his words into the bounce of the song. It'll take time, I know that, but in a while, you're gonna be mine. I know it. We'll do it in style. That line and the pre-choruses, "'Cause I've made my mind up, you're going to be mine," and "When you've made your mind up, forever to be mine," capture Sunshine Superman's can-do attitude. He could be moping around, staying in bed all day, "Boo-hoo, I've lost my one true love." But no! Donovan is walking around with this newfound sense of confidence. Hear those self-assured he throws in. He is gonna get his lady back. He is so charismatic that even when he goofs the lyrics to his own song, he makes it work, and you can't deny that rhythm. In the Sunshine Superman documentary, Don touches on the painterly vision of a lot of pop writers at the time. He specifically names John Lennon and his Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. After a quick strike of the violin bow, this sound clearly meant to stitch two ideas together, like listening to a storybook. We are introduced to Donovan the Bard. His own painterly vision takes on the form of stained-glass windows on Legend of Girl-Child Linda. Golden apples and grapes of rubies, a throne of white ivory, and a white lace gown for the White Queen in her jade tower. He often leans obscure but no less evocative. A princess lay sleeping, so gentle and kind, while her prince took to battle with his confused mind. He's a modern romantic. He acknowledges that he's battling the dragon inside. There are so many moments like these on Girl Child, which are sung in this soft, circling melody. Very folk thing to do, to have a melody always folding in on itself, see Scarborough Fair. There are smart touches from production too, the cymbal taps to sound like clashing metal swords. All that being said, Girl Child is really long for what it is. It works as a lullaby, which is what the artist intended. He would elaborate on children's songs on his next album, and write most of them better than the songs for adults. But 7 minutes of Girl Child just disrupts Sunshine Superman's rhythm. It breaks its momentum. And the worst part is, we don't even get a happy ending. "My sword it lies broken and cast in a lake. In a dream I was told that my princess would wake." It looks pretty bleak for our prince and his lady. The spell could not be broken. He was not her true love's kiss. Girl Child can lose my interest fast if I'm not in the right mood, and the only right mood is as I'm right about to go to sleep. But I can always count on my favorite Donovan song to grab me. And the Stones' Paint It Black use the sitar in a pop song structure. I see a red door and I want it painted black. And the Beatles' Love You Too went full raga. Three Kingfishers expertly places the sitar, tambura, and bongos into a folk music structure. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Don establishes the melody on softly picked acoustic guitar. He was famed for his finger picking. The bongos bubble up every once in a while. The tambura groans, and the sitar picks up on the exotic melody that Don sings. It suits his Eastern vocal run on "Oh, I Dreamed You Were a Jewel," sitting in a golden crown on my head. The sitar does a little call and response with "my head." A lot of people rag on Donovan for his flowery, acid-soaked writing style, but consider a song like Three Kingfishers, which already has such a heady, potent arrangement. Against this backdrop, a vague verse like, "Look at the tiny oceans in my hand. Waves of liquid colors touch the sand," sets the listener's imagination on fire. The tiny oceans are the creases in his palm. The waves of liquid colors are the swirls in his fingerprints. Three Kingfishers then lifts the gossamer veil into dreams and runs off with my heart with Sean Phillips, John Carr, and Peter Pilifian on a mischievous fortune teller's fiddle. They are the MVPs of this record, and they show it with this jam. They carry the second half of the song over the ostinato. Hearing them interact is like watching a ballet. Their movements are so sweeping and wide, light on their feet, and I'm left wondering why this must be over so soon. I could do 6 or 7 minutes of Three Kingfishers much more easily than I could do 7 minutes of Girl Child. Donovan has a lot more present of a role on my second favorite song of his, Ferris Wheel. This time, the double bass takes the ostinato, and the sitar has a much more atmospheric role, stepping up and down the scale as Donovan's voice takes center stage. For years, I have wondered how a voice like Donovan's, which is so classically British folk, could fit so well with instruments like sitar, violin, guitar, tambura. It was around Ferris Wheel on my last listen through before sitting down to film this, and definitely by Fat Angel, that it finally clicked for me. Donovan's voice is like a cello. You hear it when he sustains the note on Take Time and Time. This slow, very subtle crescendo followed by short phrases. Not quite staccato, but just so. Take time and tie your pretty hair. It's stunning, especially when the sitar peeks through the clouds to climb down into the song. In interview, Don said this song was about a girl we met that got her hair caught in a Ferris wheel and had to cut it off. This guy can turn most any misfortune into a thing of beauty. A silver bicycle you shall ride, to bathe your mind in the quiet tide. Far off as it seems, your hair will mend, and a Samson's strength to begin again. Clever mention of Samson there, who lost his powers when Delilah cut off his hair. I appreciate the lesson this song bears. The moral here, if any, my friend, follow your dream through to the very end. As fate would have it, my favorite jazz guitarist, Gabor Szabo, covered both of my favorite Donovan songs. Three Kingfishers is on Bacchanal. Ferris Wheel is on Dreams. The latter is such a good cover, I thought that was the original. But of this batch of songs, Sunshine Superman songs, Bert's Blues was the best choice for the side one closer. It has a strong jazz sensibility. I like how the hand drums and the drum kit mesh. Bert Jansch was one of Donovan's heroes. Many songs to follow will be dedicated to Bert. He named Bert's Blues as a thank you to Bert for letting him cover Oh Deed I Do, but read the lyrics and it's low-key another song about Linda. But I hurt my good gal. I hope she makes out right. Flying through the night, flying to California. I've been picking up the sunshine, drinking down the rain. The highs are high, being a pop star at the height of your career and tripping every weekend with the likes of the Byrds and the Jefferson Airplane. But the lows are low without his love. He's accepting that he might have lost her forever. You know time could bring a change, girl. It ain't for me to say. You'll soon be out of range, girl. This could only be the way it's meant to be. He pulls in some mythological images. Lucifer calls his legions from the hillside, sadly goes the wind on its way to Hades. And then John Cameron brings in the assist on what might be one of the best codas on any 60s pop song. The quaint, stately harpsichord refrain, it might even be a little stale, is followed by these strings, also quite done up, and maybe a clarinet. But these prove to be a bait and switch because the arrangement breaks down to the cello and then it bursts into a smoke-filled club and the whole place has come alive. Never did a folk record have swagger, but as Dawn ad-libs, it does. It totally takes you by surprise. It's a really fresh and energetic way to close out what otherwise might have been a pretty low-key side of an LP. Side 2 opens with the Donovan song that just might live forever. It blew up on TikTok a couple years ago, Lana Del Rey covered it a few years before that. I understand why this song won't die. It's foreboding and spooky. The Hammond organ is a classic 60s instrument. People love to hear it, and Lenny Matlin takes a memorable solo in the middle. I think this song stands out in Donovan's discography because he writes from a point of view he rarely wrote from. Paranoia. His repeated cries of "oh no" and insistent bass under "must be the season of the witch." It's very tense and without much resolution when it comes back to that creeping bass line. This is one of his better vocal performances on a rocker, by the way. When I look over my shoulder, what do you think I see? Some other cat looking over his shoulder at me. The arrangement is all black cats and number 13s, but I think Season of the Witch has its basis outside superstition. In his memoir, he wrote about how commercial Hollywood was and how everything felt like an ad, and that frightened him. When I look in my window, so many people to be. In the land of showbiz, there are bad omens and fakes all around. 2 rabbits running in the ditch, and beatniks are out to make it rich. Speaking of Hollywood, The Trip is his weird and wonderful ode to all the kooky characters he met on the Strip. Donovan hit the Strip smack in the middle of its golden age. You had The Haunt, Pandora's Box, The Whiskey, The London Fog, of course, The Trip, the club this song is named for. At the golden age of LSD, right before the US criminalized the stuff. In this one, Donovan captures the wonder and the perpetual state of confusion that is hitting this golden spot in this golden age while high as a friggin' kite. His stuttering, lights to twinkling on sunset, hits that incessant groove and that slick violin part. What goes on, chick, what goes on, I really want to know, makes no sense, but it's so catchy that I don't even care. So many faces go by in such rapid succession, like we're trapped on a merry-go-round. A woman with sequins in her hair who looks straight out of a Felina film. Whatever you say, Donovan, if my name is spelled with an A instead of an I, sure. Bob Dylan with a broken hourglass a la a Jerry Schatzberg photo shoot. Joan Baez in a white lace dress looking cool with a black lace fan. Donovan puts us right in the middle of the action. Moral of the story? Don't get stuck on that merry-go-round, distracted by the pretty lights on sunset. There are things to do and people to see, but don't get high on your own supply. Girl, you drank a lot of drink me, but you ain't in Wonderland. Guinevere goes back to full medieval, but this is the dud of the record. It's too ornate, too stiff, and too slow, even for the laid-back group of Sunshine Superman. Thankfully, Donovan regains his bearings for cool, groovy jazz number and his ode to Cass Elliot. You can call her most anything, even the fat angel, I guess, but don't call her mama anymore. I was surprised to learn that this song was the source of Fly Translove Airways. Jefferson Airplane sang that, and, if I'm not mistaken, our old friends at the Translove Commune would be named after this lyric. Fat Angel is a pretty mellow, nondescript number, except for how Dawn sings, "We'll be flying at an altitude of 39,000 feet. These vocal flips are agile, crystal clear, and quite like the short strokes of a bow on a stringed instrument. Finally, we have Celeste. The arrangement is a perfect balance between East and West, all of the ideas we've introduced on this record. It takes a maximalist approach with violin, sitar, tambura, organ, hand drums, and a drum kit. This is our grand finale. All the dancers are brought out on stage for the final act. I'm interested in Celeste because in this lyric lies Donovan's thesis statement as a songwriter. My songs are merely dreams visiting my mind. We talk a while by a crooked style. You're lucky to catch a few. He's merely the mouthpiece for the muse. Though the artist is able to commune with the muse, he is no chosen one. There's no magic wand in a perfumed hand. Though this line is ensconced in more of his shimmering visions, in my crystal halls a feather falls, beautiful just for you, It seems he's realized that life is no fairy tale. He is the prince with a confused mind. Dawn crept in unseen to find me still awake. A strange young girl sang her songs for me and left 'fore the day was born. The dark princess with the saddening jest, she lowered her eyes of woe, and I felt her sigh. I wouldn't like to try the changes she's going through, but I hope love comes right through them all for you. Real life has separated Dawn and his dark princess Linda. Maybe the changes they're going through have parted them forever. But still, he hopes that his songs, all spun with nothing but love for her, will get through to her somehow. So whatever happened to those two? Gather round and let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, in a land not so far away, a singing fairy tale prince was cast into exile. Tax exile, that is. For most of 1970, he lives and works in Japan, but after a while, the prince grew weary of being out on the open road, so he quit his traveling band of troubadour men, also called Open Road. Our prince returns to his little cottage in England, after spending the past 5 years in a far-off kingdom of her own. Who should turn up there looking for her prince but the long-lost princess, Donovan's one true love, Linda! And to this day, almost 56 years later, Linda and Donovan are still together. He adopted her son and raised him as his own, and they all lived happily ever after. The end. So rarely do star-crossed lovers in rock and roll music have a happy ending. It might be totally cheesy, but I like it. I was a girl once. I was raised on princesses, talking mice, spells only true love could break, and little happy dwarves all living in a cottage in the woods together. And I'm reminded of something Donovan said to Disc Magazine in December of 1966. I shall never grow old. I may age, but not grow old. That's why I love him. For the joy, fun, and whimsy he kept in his heart. He still sings Celeste at like 80 years old, and though he's weathered and gray and his voice wears the time that has passed, when he sings his fairy tales, we still believe him. For a moment, he makes us believe in them. I really can't speak for others because sometimes I feel like I'm the only Donovan defender in the room. Less and less people keep joy, fun, and whimsy in their heart these days, and I get it. His flowery writing can get a little fey, and not in the good way, but after 60 years, none of the colors of Sunshine Superman have faded. The characters Donovan so lovingly built jump off the page and run around in your mind. You want to travel to far-off lands with them. Plus, the marriage of East and West was the best it ever was here. Mickey and John got it just right. They brought raga, jazz, and a taste of rock into folk. These stories would be only half as powerful without the exotic, escapist visions their arrangements nurture. This combination of the writing, the vision, the execution remains a genre-defining body of work. How do you go wrong with the album that invented psychedelic folk? Paired with a little incense and maybe some funny grass, Sunshine Superman turns real life into a fairy tale. My personal favorites off this one are the title track, Three Kingfishers, Ferris Wheel, Bert's Blues, Season of the Witch, and The Trip. Remember, if you want to keep up with all of my favorites from all the Vinyl Mondays, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description. I update it every week, and that is it! That was Sunshine Superman 60 years later. What do you think of this album? What do you think of Donovan? Leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you guys have to say about albums that I love, and remember, despite what some guy on the internet says, your opinion matters. If you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday, Monday mornings at 11, a new episode of my podcast every other Friday at noon, and if you so choose, you can become a member of the freaking Peanut Gallery, my Patreon, where you get early access to uncensored, extended versions of these episodes and a bonus video every month. It gives a little extra support to what I do. thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!